Right. Hello, Twitter. Hello, YouTube. Welcome back. I'm trying something new tonight on two levels. One is that not being all like pumped up and puffed up because it's like, oh, YouTube. Which, I don't know, something about YouTube makes me want to be like that. The second is that I've been wanting to do this for a long time, do these like long form. Oh, shoot. I'm supposed to start. Okay. Start doing these long form video watches as opposed to short form things. Like watch a long form video that's like the best video I've watched that week or that month, and just kind of watch it together. I've seen the main person I've seen do this is Nick Fuentes, and what I've found is that oftentimes, like with something that like I'm kind of interested in, I'd rather listen. I usually listen. I usually don't watch. Listen to him watching something rather than watch it, because it's like mostly it's just watching the thing, and then every so often he chimes in, and then every so often he goes off at length on something, and it's just more enjoyable. And so, great artists steal, and so, I've always wanted to steal that, and I just haven't gotten around to it until now. And I think that this is like the perfect first video, because it's like Peter Thiel and the Antichrist. And I feel like, Peter Thiel is sort of like the patron saint of technologists, right? I mean, you could say Steve Jobs, but of the Gen X technologists. Gen X, yeah, let's say Gen X. Because the thing is that Elon Musk he's actually like number 3, I think. And you could say that Mark Andreessen is number 1. He like invented the web browser and everything. But I think like Peter Thiel is absolutely the person Mark Andreessen respects the most. He even says that he has like a mental model of Peter that he has on his shoulder. So when he's like making decisions, he also like tries to ask the mental model of, Peter GPT that he has created over the years. And, Mark Andreessen is somewhat atheistic. You got Elon wearing like the, antichrist Halloween thing. And, theoretically this is a joke, but it's certainly not what a very religious person would do. Naval he's kind of in that like spiritual but not religious thing. Balaji and Brian Johnson, they have super like atheist vibes in a certain way. Or I guess Brian Johnson could be like a DMT god guy. He's got a DMT tattoo. But then you got Peter Thiel, right? Like this serious Christian, right? Founders Fund, Palantir, they funded Balaji, and Council, and talking about the Antichrist, that everybody's worried about Armageddon, but ain't nobody worried about the Antichrist. What the fuck? So anyway, I've rambled long enough at the intro, I think. This is a long watch. So this is really made not to like watch so much as be listened to, right? You just have it on in the background, and we're watching it together. So I'm really proud of myself, because this is like a real be the change you wish to see moment in my content career. I wish Nick Fuentes, Owen Benjamin, Rogan, like Fight Companion, right? I wish people did this more, right? So if you wish people did things more, and then you also have a hankering to do them, you should probably do that thing. So without further ado, this is the first episode of Watch with 5D. I'm Otis 5D.
Watch with 5D. With Otis 5D.
All right, not a bad intro, I think. Beat made by moi, of course. All the beats are made by
brilliant,
me.
urbane, and immensely successful entrepreneur.
The brilliant Urbane.
One of the most
Peter
sophisticated men
Robinson,
in
Hoover
America,
Institute,
taking
Stanford
ancient
is our
prophecies
host.
Seriously.
Yes,
Peter Thiel,
Ancient Prophecy,
Uncommon
seriously.
Knowledge now.
Peter looking good in this video. Dude, I love this. This is so dope. Bro, we need more. You know what fucking EAC needs more? Like, I know Praxis is kind of into this, but it's like, bro, where's the fucking vibes? This makes me think of like old. This makes me think of like old Garrison Keillor. You know, like when we were sophisticated. What happened to fucking being sophisticated and listening to fucking classical music, not because we're like fucking virtue signaling, but because we're
Welcome
fucking.
to Uncommon
It makes me
Knowledge.
think
I'm
of
Peter
Indian
Robinson.
Bronson, bro.
Peter Thiel received his undergraduate and law degrees here at Stanford. He co-founded PayPal, became the first outside investor in Facebook, and co-founded Palantir, and remains an important tech investor. He has also established himself
He certainly does remain
as a remarkable thinker. A self-described contrarian,
Important
Peter
tech
Thiel has
investor.
never proven more contrary than in taking seriously the biblical framework for
Dead
probing
ass,
the meaning
bro.
of history and what ancient prophecies might help us to think, to understand about our predicament.
It's like Mark Andreessen's too busy reading the Ancient City when he should be reading fucking Thessalonians, bruh.
today. I should note that although viewers will find this second conversation interesting enough on its own, I'm sure of that, the conversation may prove even more striking
so glad I'm
if
doing
they've already
this.
watched our first conversation, which you'll be able to
Yeah,
find
definitely
on
watch
YouTube.
the first
Peter,
one.
welcome back.
I've watched both. I watched this already. And I've watched
Antichrist.
the other one a couple
Cardinal
times,
Newman, the great
maybe
19th
even
century
3
author and
times.
theologian, writes that it is the duty, that's a quote from Newman, the duty of believers, quote, ever to be watching for the end times, quote, and above all, to keep in mind the great and awful sign of which St. Paul speaks to the Thessalonians, the emergence of, quote, the very image of Satan, the fearful and hateful antichrist.
I
close
love
quote.
that we're
As
doing this.
I
I'm
understand your
so
argument,
happy
you hold,
right now.
one, that the prophecy of an antichrist in one way or another remains valid, or at least useful. Two, that it remains our
He's
duty,
such a
again,
good
Cardinal
host.
Newman's word, duty, to watch for the signs that it might emerge. And three,
Dude, this is so good. I just love bringing back real intellectual culture. This is what being an intellectual was in like from the 90s to like prehistory. It's like you think deeply about things for the sake of thinking deeply about things, and you're not fucking doing it for the gram. You're like a person who takes ideas seriously, and like that's what it's so I love it. It's like when you go back and watch fucking Thomas Sowell videos and fucking Milton Friedman and what's the dude, the Buckley, yeah, whatever. All those debates that's a bit of Norman Mailer, all these people, Gore Vidal, like. Dude, it's so dope that that's coming back.
that duty is now almost entirely neglected and forgotten.
You know, like
Fair?
Twitter Spaces
Yeah.
and Clubhouse ain't enough.
Well,
Tell us, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, there's so many, there's so many different things one can say about it. There's a, I think it was Ivan Illich who said
Looking
that
good,
at the time
man.
before Christ, there were many forerunners to Christ. There's so many different
What does he
things
say?
one can
Does he
say
say
about it.
Ivan
There's
Illich?
I think it was Ivan Illich who said that before, in the time before
love it.
Christ, there were many
We're like-
forerunners to Christ. In the time after Christ, there will be many forerunners of the Antichrist. So
Wait, who is I don't even know. You know what? We're going to do this. This is the point of this video. The point of this video is for us to get fucking smart together. I don't want to front like, oh yeah, of course, Ivan Illich. I think I'm so embarrassed. I feel like he's not talking about the death of Ivan Illich, is he, from Tolstoy? Ivan Illich? Am I tripping? Like the death. Oh no, it's okay. Okay, Ivan Illich. So Ivan Ilyich is the Tolstoy short story that I know, spelled Ilyich. Ivan Illich is Ivanillich. In the future, I'll maybe have this up on screens or something, but he was an Austrian philosopher and theologian. I didn't know that. I don't know this person. This is what I love, bro, is when people like, so he wrote a book called Deschooling Society, 1971, criticizes modern society's institutional approach to education. 1975 book, Medical Nemesis, the concept of medical harm, argues that industrialized society widely impairs quality of life by over-medicalizing life and pathologizing normal conditions and creating false dependency. He called himself an errant pilgrim. Okay, see, my point is I love that he just puts names out and just like assumes a level of context and intelligence to the audience that like people don't do. Everything's like a 101 video now. Like I'm tired of that
Well,
Tell us,
shit.
go ahead.
I mean, yeah,
Here we
there's
go.
so many, there's
Here we
there's so
go.
many different things
We're
one can
locked
say
in.
about it. There's a, I think it was Ivan Illich who said that in the time before Christ, there were many forerunners to Christ. In the time after Christ, there will be many forerunners of the Antichrist. So in some sense, it's a type. So Nero was a type of the Antichrist, or maybe Napoleon was a type of the Antichrist. And it's sort of a, it's someone who aspires for world domination, creation of this sort of one world state. In some ways, Alexander
don't know
the
if I
Great was
buy
sort of a
that.
pre-Christ
I
prototype.
feel
of the
like it's
Antichrist.
more
Very parallel.
spiritual. It makes me feel like Peter Thiel needs to fucking do less, blood transfusions and more ayahuasca, more DMT or something. I don't really buy what he just said, but
To Christ, they both
this is
died
what I
at
want to talk
33.
about.
Alexander conquers the world.
I want to be part of these
Christ saves us, and
conversations.
sort of a compare and contrast.
Fuck all the other
but
retard
in some sense, the
conversations.
Antichrist as an idea is something that really comes into being in the world after Christ. And so there's, and then there's a lot of things about it that are mysterious. In some ways, the Antichrist copies Christ. The Antichrist pretends to be greater than Christ, hyper-Christian, ultra-Christian, and then maybe
Communism,
only ultimately
wokeness.
deeply anti-Christian.
So
And then
go ahead.
And then you can think of it as a system, where maybe communism is a one world system. So it's an ideology or a system. And then of course you can also think of it as Newman did, where it's sort of the final dictator of the
Who's
one world
Newman?
state, where it's still, you stress it more as a person.
love
You
it.
can think of it as a type, a system.
I'm so tired of like knowing everything everybody says already. If you think it's fuck you, I don't care. I'm just being, I'm saying what I actually think. Okay. I'm so happy. I don't know who Newman is. I don't even know how to look it up. I love it. I love being behind and
Person.
needing to
It has
catch
something
up.
to do in this post-Christian. It's something that's sort of a possibility in this post-Christian world. It is in some ways, and it's related to Christ in a very complicated way. So the theological question you can always ask, is it possible to be too Christian? And in theory, no, but in practice, if you think you're more Christian than Christ, you're in trouble.
From a prophecy 2,000 years old to our own times, you draw attention to two fictional portrayals of an Antichrist from about a century ago. Vladimir Soloviev, a Russian mystic, in 1900 wrote a book, or
I don't know this
novella,
person.
A Short Tale of the Antichrist, and then a 1905 novel by a Roman Catholic English priest called Robert Hugh Benson, and the novel is Lord of the World. In both of these fictional accounts,
I love it. I love
the
this so
Antichrist
much.
emerges as a charismatic figure, a kind of Superman. Soloviev, quote, "There was a remarkable person, many called him a Superman. He believed in God, but in the depths of his soul, he preferred himself." In Benson,
God,
the
I feel
Antichrist is
like
portrayed
my
again as a
vision of
charismatic figure.
I feel like my vision of the Antichrist is so much darker than this. I feel like this kind of visions of the Antichrist is so human, and maybe I'm delusional or
He
something.
becomes
But
president of Europe, then in some mysterious way he's elected president of the world. But in both of those fictional accounts of a century ago, there's a plot hole. We're not given the mechanism by which this strange charismatic figure achieves dominance. And your argument is, again, if I understand it correctly, that now, today, a century
the UFC fighter Bryce Mitchell, Patrick Bet-David's putting out clips of it right now, is saying that Elon is the Antichrist. I feel like logically, the person who would be, like the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. That seems like the kind of thing a fucking Antichrist would say. Everything's about a joke. Everything's like a funny and entertaining. I'm such a huge fan of what Elon is doing especially with Starlink and, the free speech except the Jews on Twitter. But that wearing the Antichrist satanic costume as the profile picture for so long, and I don't know, it just who else would run the world except Elon Musk, right? He's so much better than Trump, for instance, or Putin, or Xi Jinping, or fucking Bruno Mars, or it's like Taylor Swift, like Kanye. It's like Elon Musk. So I don't know. And all the transhumanism stuff, put fucking chips in your brain.
after Soloviev and
I don't
Robert Hugh
know.
Benson, we can understand a mechanism. We could imagine a mechanism by which such a figure might emerge.
Yeah, by the way, those are both fantastic books. I have a preference for the Soloviev one, but Benson and Soloviev
I
are
love
both
it. So good,
terrific
man.
books. There are all these extraordinary ways that they still resonate 100 years later. So, Soloviev envisions the United States of Europe, so sort of a European Union, the sort of super state.
Wow.
In Benson, the Antichrist is a Jewish socialist senator from Vermont.
Sounds
And,
right.
I was a little bit nervous about Bernie Sanders, but so there
A little too much on the nose.
There sort of are elements of them where.
By the way, you're not quite the only person. I noticed in reading up on this, Benedict XVI several times mentioned approvingly the Robert Hugh Benson book, and Pope Francis over and over again has referred to it. So, two popes and Peter Thiel.
This is the kind of thing, like, I wish that I would read those books, right? And I won't, right? So I want to have one of these Alex Hermosi style private community things, a paid community, whatever. It's a dream of mine. And it would be so awesome if the people kind of organized that and did a book reading club of these books, and then I was just a participant of it. I'm just kind of thinking out loud because I want to read these books, but if I'm not part of some book club, then it's not going to happen. Is the reality?
Parts of it where they have this feeling being near great literature, but the plot hole is sort of like how does a sort of world takeover actually happen? And it's kind of not a deus ex machina, but like a daemonium ex machina. It's like the Antichrist just gives these hypnotic speeches where nobody can remember a word. And
like
then
Barack
sort of just
Obama.
swindles people's souls out of them, and they submit to this totalitarian state or something like this.
I remember so clearly, I've mentioned this many times before in my videos, but in 2007, I want to say, it could be 8, but I think 7, listening to videos of Obama and kind of being like, yeah, it's cool and everything. And then you'd listen to Ron Paul and there would be so much substance. And you go back to Obama and you'd be like, if I'm really honest, he's not saying anything. So that's a bit of an aside.
And I think,
but relevant.
I think if we were to speculate on how to solve that plot hole, we have an answer in the world after 1945 that people are in 1900, early 20th century, people were not yet scared of apocalyptic weapons. They could not imagine, anything of the scale that we have by the second half of the 20th century. And so the Antichrist takes over by talking about Armageddon.
Let's show this a brief video, which we will edit into the show, of course.
One world or none.
Exactly.
I just had to, this is the first episode, so cut me a little slack. I'm just so happy to be doing this. It's I just feel like I'm part of the intellectual culture of the world by virtue of doing this. And, I might be the tiniest part, but it's I'm part of it. And I love it. I love it. I really feel like I'm being the change I wish to see in the world. And that's the best feeling that there is in the world, is being the change you wish to see in the world and feeling like you're actually embodying that. And I feel like that right now.
When a neutron strikes, the atom is split. Release neutrons split other atoms. The result is atomic energy. So the people of the world use this energy for the destruction or the betterment of mankind.
So that's a 1946 video. Everything about it, the images, the tension in the narrator's voice, the background music, is to be scary. The choice is this or one world. That dates from 1946, as I said, but here's a quotation from just a few years ago. It's from a paper titled The Vulnerable World Hypothesis by the very hip techno-philosopher Nick Bostrom. Quote, "What is needed to solve problems that involve challenges of international coordination, challenges such as nukes, pandemic,
We need a
dangers,
physiognomy
techno-threats,
check.
what is needed is effective global
Yeesh.
governance."
Yeesh.
Franklin Roosevelt designed
Does
the
make
United
sense.
Nations to
You have to admit,
serve
there's a
in some way
logic
as a
to
kind
it.
of world parliament after the end of the Second World War. The United Nations didn't work, but maybe FDR was just ahead of his time.
It is the same. This is the plot hole in Soloviev and Benson. And it's an interesting question. What is the difference between that? We have this very secular language, one world or none, and then there's the sort of overly religious question, antichrist or Armageddon. And aren't they? And my thesis, they're somehow the same. And the difference, if I had to say what the difference between those two ways of asking the questions are, is Antichrist or Armageddon, it sounds like they're both bad options. And that way of asking the question, it pushes us to find a third way and not to just steer from one into the other.
Mark Andreessen tweeted today that it turns out, and Elon was like, yeah, totally. It turned out that Twitter was more important than flying cars. So I think it's important to always have that caveat with Thiel, is that he's so convincing and what he says is so depressing and realistic, but it doesn't mean he's right. Like Venkatesh Rao, shout out to VGR, you little motherfucker, said that no one could have predicted that the biggest thing that would reduce like carbon emissions would be in the aughts would be like Skype, right? Because people just didn't have to get on planes anymore. Now you could say Zoom or something. So I feel like if you think like what we need was advancement in in atoms, not bits. It's dangerous to be. I guess one of my core theses in my own sort of philosophy is like certainty is dangerous, and Thiel can be very certain, in my opinion, and it's very synchronistic that on the day I'm recording this, I feel like Mark Andreessen just fucking mogged him, where he's like, bro, Twitter was it's like Thiel's thing, just in case you're way below the level of this video, was that, they promised us flying cars and all we got was 140 characters. But it turned out that like 140 characters is what changed the world, because now, Peter Thiel, we have like a government of Peter Thiel now with David Sachs and Elon and fucking JD Vance and Vivek and, all the rest.
World War None.
Palantir.
Those sound like they're
Joe
exclusive,
Lonsdale.
but also exhaustive possibilities. And since we don't want to have no world, we want the one world.
Harvard Law School, Adrian
Seems
Vermeule
like a false dichotomy.
wants big government. He has already argued for continent-wide government, which would represent a step toward global governance. And his view is that if the government is based on some understanding of Christian ethics and you make sure that it reflects subsidiarity, the principle that problems should be solved by the smallest unit possible, then big government coordinate, international coordinate. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. And you just don't buy that.
I do not buy it. I think I don't know. I'm much more in the Lord Acton camp that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and it would be a power with no check. There would be no outside left. It would.
I totally agree with this.
In a sense, it would be the biggest crowd. It would be the biggest bubble. I
could not agree more.
Probably a place where the Bible differs from Enlightenment rationality. Enlightenment rationality believes in the wisdom of crowds. Yes. The Bible believes in the madness of crowds, and if you have a world state, that's in some sense the largest crowd. It's the whole humanity closing in on itself. It's
there's no
mob.
exit.
So there sort of are these.
The thing is that what I've thought about this a lot recently is that if you get purged from like a colony on Mars, it means they kill you, right? Like, fortunately, we still have, like, you get purged from one community or one country and you can just like go to another community or another country. If something is like, I don't even want to use like totalizing. I wanted to not use the word totalitarian because that's not important. If something is just one thing and you get purged from it, there's really like, that really is just equivalent to like they kill you, because how else can they get rid of you if there's just one thing? And that makes sense a lot on Mars, right? Like, what are you going to do? Send them to the other Mars colony? Until there's a second Mars colony, if you're like the troublemaker, like, what can they do other than fucking kill you, basically? I guess they could put you in jail or something, but anyway.
They're probably adjacent ideas about the fallen nature of man and original sin that make me nervous about the one world state. Subsidiarity is good in theory and practice. The devil is in the details, and if too much of the power has to be at the top level. If you absolutize things like climate change or nuclear weapons control or things like this, that has to all be at the top echelon. It's not going to be decided by the city of Palo Alto or by some kind of a subsidiary.
Right. We need a fucking
subsidiary
mesh
layer.
network of
I have
global
more prosaic
civilization.
intuitions where
I love how he says
sort of wonder what
prosaic
would be the marginal
intuitions.
tax rates in a one world state
love
where
it.
people couldn't move, and
I love
suspect
it.
they would be quite high. It's
I
sort of
love
like
it.
East Germany.
I love
no
it.
Escape. And
It's
Could
so
you might
real.
Texas or Florida and get a zero income tax rate.
and then I think California would push them higher, and the U.S. would push them higher, and the limit of that seems quite bad. And then of course,
in Vietnam, when it was called Indochina, if I remember correctly, the tax on the rice farmers by the French was like 90%, right? So it's like when you don't control your shit, they fucking tax you. They tax that ass like heavy.
go down to the
Heavy.
Boston argument. Yeah, you need effective global government and extremely effective global policing. And so if you think about things like AI technology, it's just we have to stop anyone from programming the AI. And so you have to, in some sense, monitor every keystroke everywhere. So sort of something that's powerful enough to control the whole world.
So this goes back
is,
to
These are
your
important
argument
conversations, man.
the first part of this conversation, that for the first time in history, we can actually imagine human beings destroying the world. That's quite a plot. Now, also, we have the mechanisms that would make world government, a gigantic global surveillance state, is plausible.
that seems plausible too. And then I think, again, to come back to the Soloviev-Benson plot hole, on its own, they both seem not that desirable. Why would we have a crazy surveillance state? Why would we, why would we do this? But if you're scared enough of these things, that's the weapon. And this is sort of where.
That's the thing. I think, the biggest steel man against Elon being the Antichrist. Now, I don't think Elon's the Antichrist, okay? But I feel like he's the most plausible. Like if somebody said, if anybody currently alive was the Antichrist, who would it be? I'd say Elon. Even though I put the odds of that at like 2%, 1% or something. I just can't think of anybody more than that. Was it fucking Jack Ma or something? Vitalik. But what the hell was I going to say? I don't even remember what I was going to say.
On its own, they both seem not that desirable. Why would we have a crazy surveillance state? Why would we,
I don't even remember what
why
I was
would
going to say.
why would we do this? But if you're scared enough,
If you're scared enough. Okay. So to steelman the case that Elon is not the Antichrist, I don't feel like he's trying to scare us that much. I mean, maybe about depopulation, but other than that, he wasn't trying to scare us about COVID. He's not trying to scare us about
Scared
climate
enough of
change,
these
even though
things.
he's doing
That's-
electric
that's-
cars and
that's the weapon.
everything,
This
and
is-
solar
this is
panels,
sort of where, my speculative thesis is that if the Antichrist were to come to power, it would be by talking about Armageddon all the time. And
Peter Thiel.
I totally agree with
Antichrist
that.
would
Fucking
talk about
Elizabeth
Armageddon all the
Warren,
time.
bro.
He'd scare people, and then
The
off to safety.
Democrats, basically.
it's the First
The
Thessalonians
European
5:3,
Greens.
the
Climate,
slogan of
the
the Antichrist is
wokes.
peace and safety, and so which is
The
nothing wrong with peace and
slogan
safety, but,
of the
you have to
Antichrist
sort of
is
imagine
peace and
that
safety.
It resonates very differently in a world where the stakes are so absolute, where the stakes are so extreme, where the alternative to peace and safety is, Armageddon and the destruction of all things. And then that's where peace and safety gets you way more than it would have in 1750.
Rene Girard, in I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, one of his
I
books.
love it.
The Antichrist
Now we're going to
boasts
Rene
of bringing to
Girard.
human beings the peace and tolerance.
Rene Girard, in his book, I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, states that the Antichrist boasts of bringing to human beings the peace and tolerance that Christianity promised but has failed to deliver. That's like fucking wokeness, bro.
that Christianity promised,
That's fucking
but it
wokeness.
failed to deliver.
That's
there are
straight
probably-
up wokeness.
I think there are all these elements where it's downstream from Christianity. You can think of, the poor shall inherit the earth, Sermon on the Mount. Marxist theory is we're going to be more Christian. We're going to accelerate it. We're going to bring it about faster. So there is, the Antichrist probably presents as a great humanitarian, as a
Yeah.
great.
Greta.
It's reasonable. an extreme.
Dude, that would be the most entertaining outcome. If fucking Greta Thunberg is the fucking antichrist, that's by far the most entertaining outcome, and thus maybe on Polymarket the odds should go up.
Altruist, all of those kinds of things, and these things are not, simply anti-Christian, but it is always when they get overly combined with state power that something is very wrong. There are sort of ways Christ wants to unify the world. You have the parable of the Good Samaritan, where you should take care of people even if you're not related to them, and it's good to act like the Good Samaritan and to take care of people not just in your family or tribe or country, but then if you force everyone to be a Good Samaritan and you force a borderless world, it's somehow adjacent, somehow
George
it's
Soros,
but it's somehow also very much the opposite.
Okay, Scylla and Charybdis. And we come here.
I love it.
It'll take me another moment to set this up, but we come here.
I love it.
We depart now
I don't
from
know
Peter
this
Thiel's
stuff.
analysis, and we come to Peter Thiel's exhortation. What needs to be done? Well, a step or two to complete the analysis, and then it leads to what needs to be done, questions at least we need to be asking. Scylla and Charybdis. Odysseus is on his way home, and he has to sail past two sea monsters. Scylla is a six-headed monster who will devour sailors, and
This
Charybdis
is
is
so
a whirlpool
awesome.
that swallows ships whole and then spits them back out. And of course, they stand for sort of the horns of a dilemma. That's the way Scylla and Charybdis.
Where
are viewed.
Joseph Campbell at?
Peter Thiel. Everyone is worried about the Scylla of Armageddon, nukes, pandemics, AI. Everyone is worried about the Scylla of Armageddon. We're not worried enough about the Charybdis of one world
God,
government,
this guy.
the Antichrist.
Dude, Peter Thiel is just so fucking goated. Look at that sentence, bro. That's literally, okay, I'm going to put something out there. I don't think Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, I don't think they have anything on this. I'm not going to say like in terms of his oeuvre and their oeuvre that they're comparable, but like I feel like this is a fucking stand the test of time. Lao Tzu, Aristotle, Diamond Sutra, like the best Tolstoy. Everyone is worried about the Scylla, not worried enough about the Charybdis of one world government, the Antichrist. This analogy maker alive, like
Explain.
Barn.
Man, this just seems obviously correct.
Exactly. Exactly. I love
it's like
it.
if you think about the language that we've been using in this program.
I love when he gets
Armageddon is not that
excited.
taboo.
It's so
We
rare.
talk about that by referencing the newspapers.
Right.
We are sleepwalking. into
Exactly.
Armageddon.
Look
So
at
we've been
Peter
using this
Robbins,
program.
and he's like, me too.
Armageddon
What?
is not that taboo.
What?
We can just talk about that by referencing the
What?
newspapers.
Right.
We are sleepwalking into Armageddon, maybe not in Ukraine or the Middle East, but maybe with Taiwan and China. So they're all these.
Everybody feels the dread.
We can use. We can
No,
use
fucking
Armageddon. Maybe
Israel,
it's
bro.
literal, maybe
Samson
it's
option.
metaphorical, but that's totally acceptable. So that tells
You
you
can't talk
that's not
about
the thing
Israel
that's
'cause of
taboo.
Alex Karp.
Antichrist is like, wow, what planet are you from?
Right.
And so,
Exactly.
That's
That's why I love this. I just picture fucking Balaji and Brian Johnson just like, oh my god. But it's like, dude, you fucking got checkmated because it's like, it's Peter Thiel. It's your daddy, bro. I love it. I love that Peter fucking Thiel is the one hammering home the Antichrist in secular EAC technologist
that
community.
tells me that the existential risks are very selective of the sort that we've given, and the fears about a one world state are downplayed because they are the solution to the other ones. That is the self-governing, politically atheist, humans governing themselves solution to Armageddon is, it's what Bosmer says. It's it's effective world government,
Exactly.
extremely effective policing to stop
Exactly.
dangerous technologies from being developed and to force people to not have too diverse a set of views, because the diversity of views is what's going to push some scientists to develop technologies they shouldn't be developing. And so we are just so grooved to the Antichrist solution that we don't worry about it, because it presents itself as the solution to all these others. And then
Yep.
and then my intuition is that what that tells me is that we should worry about both, but if you had to prioritize them, you should be way more worried about the Antichrist, because no one's worried about it. And of course, don't know how literally when
See, I love it. It's so true, but it's so much like they promise us flying cars and all we got is 140 characters. It's like everybody's worried about Armageddon, so ain't nobody worried about the Antichrist, so you should be more worried about the Antichrist. It's like, oh, but I'm not actually totally sure how much the logic holds up. That's all I'll say.
take these biblical accounts, but in the biblical accounts, the Antichrist comes first. Because people are more scared of Armageddon than the Antichrist, perhaps. The Antichrist comes first. It doesn't quite work. The one world state doesn't work. It still goes haywire. Maybe you have a fantastic communist government, but somehow the AI still goes mad, and you still get to Armageddon. But that's what comes first.
All right. As I understand it, you
Does
see
he
three
talk about
possibilities. Now we
Revelation
begin
and
to
the
move
end
toward what
times
is to
and
be done.
stuff? Isn't
One
he
is to
like
end
he's supposed to be
globalization outright.
super Christian?
End world trade, but that was possibilities here. Now we begin to move toward what is to be done. One is to end globalization outright, end world trade, but that would produce a dramatical, all but unthinkable drop in living standards. So
I
end
love that he
globalization,
says
but
dramatical.
that's all but
Nobody
unthinkable.
says that.
2, permit globalization to continue in an unfettered manner, but that would be likely to lead to world government. 3, permit globalization to continue.
What did he say about number
produce a
1?
Dramatical, all but unthinkable drop in living standards. So
Oh yeah,
end
yeah, yeah, yeah.
globalization.
Isn't that there's like some economic theory? I think it's Ricardo or something that even if global trade is like really good for one person and really bad for the other, it's still, even the one that it's really bad for benefits from it. So the idea is that if the downside of like this multipolar world where because trade benefits everyone, like a lot too, not just like a bit, but like a lot. So that's like that's why you wouldn't want to do that, to stop, globalization. But then if you just let globalization run amok, then you hit, the desire, for the Klaus Schwab, fucking Noah Harari
That's all
world.
but unthinkable. 2, permit globalization to continue in an unfettered manner, but that would be likely to lead to world government. 3,
I wish I could, I wish I was like super famous and right now I could just like press a button and Steve Bannon just like appeared on the screen. And I was like, hey, what do you think of this, Steve Bannon? That's who, and Peter Navarro, what do you guys think of this? And then it's like, you get their input. I guess maybe we're going to need like Bannon GPT and like Navarro GPT. Maybe that's what we're going to need, like synthetic versions of people. Because I want to hear their take on this and then go back to the video. That would be like the ideal sort of like next level of these videos.
permit globalization to continue, but only in a permissible, good, salutary way. Limited. Tame it.
I think
Make sure
that's
it never
like the
supplants
Bannon
nation states.
way.
Quote, Peter Thiel, our only chance of achieving good globalization is to be critical of globalization.
What would
to
Jared
recognize the
Kushner
narrowness
say? Not
of
even
the
that
problem.
I
Peter?
Well, the way-
care that
the way
much,
I-
but it'd
yeah, the
still
way I
be
would
interesting to hear.
frame that is, it's certainly hard to
Which
see
I guess
how
means I do care.
things can work if we completely deglobalize. If you go back to this world that's completely separated and with no trade, no flow of ideas between different parts of the world. And so
Eliminate the internet and container shipping, and you've got it.
I don't think that's easier said than done.
If much, yes.
It's easier said than done. And but then it's precisely because we can't simply turn the clock back on all globalization that we end up having what I would call this Stockholm syndrome. And is globalization more good than bad? Is it just sort of a corrupt racket where I don't know, North Korea exports plutonium and counterfeit $100 bills and imports I don't know, Swedish prostitutes and whiskey or whatever they import. And so if you have this unit,
Goated
no
analogies,
globalization
man.
can't be an option. You'll have too Panglossian view of globalization. And this is my critique of the food.
I don't think if somebody said, hey, Otis, define Panglossian, I'd be like, so I don't want to front. Panglossian, all is for the best in this best of all, excessively optimistic. Okay.
Fukuyama, Clinton, Bush, WTO,
The New World Order, free trade. It'll all take care
it
of
was
itself.
always abstracted. Everything takes care of itself. It will all work out for the best. And at a minimum, you need to just always think there are so many bad forms of globalization. Our only chance of getting to a good one is to realize how tough it is. Maybe we should have trade treaties. We should negotiate them. They should always be negotiated by people who don't believe in free trade. If you have someone who believes in free trade, we don't need to pay attention to the details. It always will work out for the best.
Wow.
So yes,
That's like the
there's a
fucking
way. I think once you try to
Democrats
negotiate these treaties, but you always
Bannon,
want someone on
bro.
your side who deeply doesn't believe in it and who is going to hold out for, all sorts of terms.
It's kind of exciting that, people like Blake Masters and JD Vance are his proteges, and I assume are like well versed in this line of thinking and are coming into like massive amounts of power, because this just seems like so superior to everything that has existed in my lifetime up until now in terms of like ways of navigating the political reality of the world, realpolitik.
And that's sort of how we might get our way through. But yeah, I think we had, and then all these versions of this. I think there's the strange chimerica, the sort of mythical fusion of China and America that was maybe 28 years from Bush 41 to Obama, from something like 88 to 2016. And yeah, we don't want to go to a nuclear war with China. We probably don't want to go to a major war. But it's a very complicated way to manage this relationship, and simply the Panglossian intuitions that everything will automatically work out probably don't quite make it. There's always a book I'd like to reference from 1910, The Great Illusion by Norman Angell. This is a pre-World War I book, and it's
1910. All right.
and it is the world is connected through trade and finance. That there cannot be a world war because it would just destroy more than it would create. And it was a massive bestseller in 1910. Angel actually gets a Nobel Peace Prize for the book in 1933, even though sort of spectacularly wrong. But one of the lines in it was, Britain going to war with Germany makes as much sense as London invading Hertfordshire, the adjacent county to London. And just the stock market would go down more. Couldn't do this, and everyone would lose. And yet that happened. And so
God,
this sort of glib globalization, I think, is not
good
gonna work.
reference,
We need
bro.
to
Just so
ask
good.
a relentless number of hard questions about it.
Got it. So,
But then yeah, it's always in the details. I think we have to find some way to talk about these technologies where the technologies are dangerous, but it's probably in some sense it's even more dangerous not to do them. It's even more dangerous to have a society where there's zero growth. If we go full on with the Club of Rome, limits to growth. We have this fully Luddite program.
Fuck.
Again, my intuitions is that will end very badly politically. It's going to be a
For
zero-sum,
sure.
nasty Malthusian society, and
Jeez.
it will push towards something that's much more autocratic, much more totalitarian, because the pie won't grow. People will be much nastier.
so what you're asking for, well, okay, so let me ask what you're asking for. a little bit here.
So good, dude.
You said at the Cambridge Union earlier this year that you were going to
It
stay out of
makes,
politics.
it makes your head hurt. It makes
So I'm
your
not asking
heart
about
hurt.
politics. Exactly.
Makes your soul ache.
You were arguing that we should be supporting.
He's a fucking real
candidates
one, bro.
who put America first. Is that roughly where we're going here? Skeptics of free trade. This all tends toward one side of the political argument. Or are you simply, or are you? Is this an exhortation? Are you aiming this at universities and simply calling for renewed, far more practical debate, far more alive to the dangers that we now face, that have never been faced by humanity before?
Well, my starting answer for all these things is always, surely the first step is to think about these things really hard, and
Ask the questions that are not being asked.
that are not being asked. Maybe the way I framed them are too dramatic, but if that's what it takes for us to ask these questions, that's better than being stuck in I don't know, in some weird silly Groundhog Day game. I think my intuition is the stakes are very high. The political stakes are high because there are a lot of crazy things that can happen. It's hard to evaluate, which of these candidates are better. But that's, it's not just about the price of eggs or marginal inflation rates or things like this. It is about maintaining freedom in the U.S. and also not sleepwalking into Armageddon.
Peter, I have a confession to you. In my mind, when you first started talking about Scylla and Charybdis, this analysis, I wronged you. I thought to myself, this is Peter being Peter. He loves building intellectual models. He has the kind of mind that goes in that direction. Hegel, Weber, Strauss. reality is of second order. The real importance here is the model.
Real
model, because you
intellectuals,
enjoy
man.
it for its own sake. And I do think you do have a mind that looks for structures and frameworks. All right. But here, then I come across this passage from our old friend Rene. This is Rene Girard in 2009. The more probable the apocalypse becomes, the less we talk about it. Therefore, we have to awaken our sleeping consciences. And I thought, this is not a game for Peter. This is serious to you. You believe that you see questions that need to be asked that are not being asked. And you are trying to awaken our sleeping consciences. Will you accept that compliment?
I'll take that.
And you'll accept that
I'll take it.
confession? All right. So Peter Thiel, I'm quoting you now. What I hope to retrieve is a sense of the stakes, of the urgency of the question. The stakes are really, really high. It seems very dangerous that we're at a place where so few people are concerned about the Antichrist. Close quote.
Yeah, it's all the reasons we've gone through.
Okay, what kind of response have you been getting? By the way, you haven't written a book. I understand you're thinking about a book on this, but you haven't written it yet. You're still going through various iterations, talking to small groups of people. I heard you give a series of talks on this. What has the response been?
It's certainly it takes a while for people to get into the frame, and then people are extremely engaged, and it's not like the anxiety doesn't exist. It's not like people think everything is quite as normal as it should be.
Yep.
And then I think the point of it is not to be, in some sense, defeatist. This is just inscribed in the future. The point of it is to start thinking about what can be done. What some of the choices are, and Antichrist or Armageddon. That framing, we can envision a third way.
Right.
One world or none. That's pretty hard to envision a third way. And so that's where I think the biblical language, it sounds crazier, but it's actually more hopeful. One world or none, those are the two options if you're a political atheist.
Right.
The first comment on this video, I almost went through the comments and, was going to show them, but I kind of wish I had now, looking back. I think in the future I'll do that. But the first comment was talking about how, the first exhortation of Jesus is basically to come to him and to sort of, I don't know if the word is let go. I don't know exactly, but it's you never hear, or at least I don't want to say that. I don't recall often hearing Peter Thiel talk about Jesus that much, or Christianity in a kind of non-secular way of talking about it, in a Christian way. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. It's just something that's striking me right now.
Self-government or human self-destruction, and it's a choice of two incredible evils, and then I think I don't think these things are, I'm not a Calvinist. I don't think these things are determined or predestined. I always believe there's a space for human agency for us to, shape the history, and the first step has to be not to just bury our heads in the sand or whatever the equivalent is.
So, the United States, two quotations, Ronald Reagan. It's always been my belief that by a divine plan, this nation was placed between the two oceans to be sought out and found by those with a special brand of courage and love of freedom, close quote. So could it be that the United States is itself a catechon, a restrainer, a force that by its economic power and military might and the example it sets to the world holds back the chaos? I would like to believe that. You and I aren't that far apart in age. We both grew up when the country still worked under Reagan. Here's a second quotation. This is Peter Thiel, quote, "One obvious candidate for the Antichrist is the United States."
Well, I think the U.S.
Answer that without breaking my heart, please.
I think the U.S. is a natural candidate for both. And certainly the Cold War history, 49 to 89, I think Christian democracy was catechontic. I think anti-communism was
I love that they just casually throw around catechontic
ideology that stood against
both of them.
One world state of communism. And then I think, but yeah, if you want, this is very speculative, but if you think that the one world state is a military power, it's a financial economic power, it is somehow an ideological power, there still is a natural way where if things go wrong in the U.S., it would be the fulfillment of FDR's vision of the New Dealers running the world, and so the U.S. is, it is ground zero of globalization, and it's ground zero of the resistance to bad globalization. We're both. That's why it matters so much. You know, the president of the United States maybe is a catechon, maybe it's a type of antichrist, but presidential elections matter. They don't matter to the president of Europe. And,
Wow.
I think the intuition
Yeah,
that matters in the US
exactly,
is
bro.
correct. But presidential
Exactly.
elections matter.
Peter
They don't matter
Robinson
to the
gets
president
it.
of Europe.
You know that
And,
people are good reactors who get things when like you find yourself having the same sort of reaction that they're like, you know, because he's spitting right now.
And I think the intuition that they matter in the U.S. is correct. I'm not saying that will be the case for all time, but certainly second half of the 20th century and still today.
A couple of last questions here. Rene Girard, again in 2009, quote, to make the revelation wholly good and not threatening at all, to eliminate this fear, this dread. Humans have only to adopt the behavior recommended by Christ, close quote. Rene himself, as you know, ended his life as a very devout Catholic. Has this analysis had any effect on your own
I love it.
religious life, or is it in some way
That's
a
what I
kind of
was
cop out
just
to say, no,
talking
all we
about.
need to do is all practice personal holiness as best we can?
Girard always said, you know, you just need to go to church.
Right.
And I try to go to church.
Rene would be very happy.
and
Rene,
then-
somewhere
oof.
Rene is pleased.
And then
Oof.
And then at the same time, I also think that there is some part of it that is political or social or something like that, and maybe it's always a way in which I'm not as much of a saint as I should be, but I keep thinking we have to also try. I want to always try some of both,
Right.
both the personal and the political. I think Mother Teresa was a
I
greater
think it's
saint.
very honest. It's very. I really just like this. I just fundamentally like this guy. That is such an honest answer, you know. And it's such a. I'm such a fucking heathen, you know, with the fucking this and fucking that, and like, it just like say things very crassly. Like the way he said that, you know. I can't. Rene, you know, say go to church. All you have to do is go. That's it. All you have to do is go to church. I try to go to church, right? It's like it's so eloquent, it's so sophisticated, right? But then to say that, like, to understand that, right? That's his teacher, and then to say like, but I still think it's political, and you know, like maybe I'm not as saintly as I should be, but it's like. I am what I am. It's very honest. It's a very honest answer. I think.
Not as much of a saint as I should be, but I keep thinking we have to also try. I want to always try some of both,
Right.
both the personal and the political. I think Mother Teresa was a greater saint than Constantine, but there's still a part of me that has a preference for the Christianity of Constantine. You still need something like that.
Wow.
Revelation is a very frightening book, in my
This
judgment.
fucking guy.
That we've got
Dude,
plagues and beasts and the end of the world. But at the very
They're
beginning, I
covering
went
it.
back to prepare for all of this. I went back and looked at Revelation again. At the very beginning of the vision that St. John describes in the book of Revelation, here's what we get. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw one like a son of man. His voice was like the sound of rushing water, and his face shone like the sun.
Wow.
When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he laid his right hand upon me, saying, Fear not. Fear not. I died, and behold, I am alive. Close quote. So what are we to do with this fear not? You've mentioned this a number of times, this notion. It's always the problem in trying to understand history. What's going to happen no matter what we do, and what scope is there for personal action? Fear not is an injunction in the book of Revelation from Christ himself. So Christians are meant to take it very seriously. But you could easily take it as a kind of, oh, it'll all work out. There's nothing I need to do. There's nothing any of us need to do. It's out of our hands. It'll all work out. What do you do with fear not?
Well, man, this is sort of starting to get way, way, way above my theological pay grade. But I think it means something. I think God will work it all out, no matter how bad the choices are we make. And so, in some sense, in the end, God will work it out. And then at the same time, I'm not sure that we should always be looking at it from God's point of view, and from a human point of view.
Human agency
it
matters.
surely matters a lot.
All right.
Wait, why? Wait, what? What is that? God will I believe God will work it out, but I think we shouldn't be looking at it like. Is it possible? This is kind of law of attraction thinking, which that's kind of my bag. Is like, so God will work it out. So relax. It's all good. Everything's fine. Just like enjoy God's creation, right? It's so beautiful, and do what you're called to do. But you're like, but wait a second, Owen Benjamin talks about that this is like the fundamental thing of the Jews, is that, they're like, it's all good. And then they're like, yeah, but, anyway, that's neither here nor there. See, I'm so fucking crass and vulgar. I just like ruin, this beautiful moment. But is it possible that like that creates the exact scenario that you're trying to defend against? It's like the act of defending creates the attack. Dicey, right? Like that's pretty. It's like, oh, just don't put up any borders, right? So anyway, I just want to I at least want to like introduce that idea into the conversation, even if it's like immediately rejected, because like, listen.
In the end, God will work it out, and then at the same time, I'm not sure that we should always be looking at it from God's point of view,
but shouldn't we?
From a human point of view?
I don't know.
Human
It
agency
surely,
matters.
it surely
I don't
matters
know.
a lot.
All right, last
It's
question.
probably above
Let me
my
quote you one final time.
theological
Quote,
pay grade also.
maybe people think about this stuff a lot more than they let on. Close quote. So what do you have to say to some bright 20-something who does think about this stuff? What should some young American read? What should he or she do? What advice
He's
about
Peter
how to lead a
Robinson,
good life
fucking goated, bro.
when we think we may be in the end times? What advice do you have for a young Peter Thiel?
I'm always so bad in this department, but
Stumble through it.
I think, if it's too high a lift to go to church or something like that, I would say that it's
So go to church.
It's important to try to find a way to integrate your life, we're just fragmented in all these different ways, and to integrate the knowledge, to connect, what we think is going on in your life with history, with our society. We need to somehow not have this postmodern MTV-like incoherence, and there's some way that asking these questions is a way to try to, we need somewhat more integration. We need to somehow pull things back together. That's what the universities were supposed to do. Don't think they will do it, but you have to figure.
After years of deconstruction, you're calling for an active reconstruction.
Yeah, it may not happen in the progressive cult that is the university, but still, there's it is really a time for reconstruction.
Peter Thiel.
That's what this is. That's what
For
this
Uncommon Knowledge
is.
of the Hoover
That's what this
Institution and Fox
fucking
Nation,
video
I'm Peter
is.
Robinson.
It's like, let's normalize this. Let's normalize fucking talking about these things. We don't have to fucking talk about Cardi B and the Kardashians. We don't, like, no one is forcing us to do that. We don't have to endlessly talk about fucking OpenAI and, the 10 new things that just got released in Claude. Like, we can talk about God and the Antichrist and history and the desire to integrate one's life, whether that's through getting one-shotted by the ayahuasca or, going to fucking Vipassana retreats or going to church. And I'm saying this because he said, it's like, it's not going to happen in the university. It's not going to happen in fucking retard world. Retard world is cooked. It's just going to get worse. They're just going to get dumber and dumber. It's absolutely trending toward idiocracy, where it's like AI generated people punching each other in the nuts and like it just endless, like America's Funniest Home Videos, or like on acid, on fucking fentanyl, like generated by AI in an endless loop of just slop, right? Fine. Go ye elsewhere, not here. we can carve out a space and create a sort of like decentralized academy of the people who want to discuss these things and find tribes of like-minded people and build what, because that's what, right, in the fourth turning model, like we're like, I think just past the crisis point, famous last words of the fourth turning. And by the end of the fourth turning, theoretically, all the institutions are going to crumble. And then in the first turning of the 2030s, we're going to just like rebuild all new institutions. And things like what I'm doing and other people are doing, I'm not trying to, be too grandiose about my own endeavors, will theoretically become the new institutions, in some form. And so it's like the fucking meme of, you can just do stuff. You can just build stuff, right? You can just watch Peter Thiel talk about God and the Antichrist and Armageddon with your friends. Or like me, you can just stream yourself watching it and talking about it to like whoever else is like super into that kind of stuff, this kind of stuff. And that's me. I think these are like the most important conversations that are happening. There are very deep things happening on planet Earth right now. And I don't want to sleepwalk into anything. I want to go into the future with my eyes wide open, kind of fucking Clockwork Orange style. So anyway, I'm just so happy. I think this is one of the proudest moments of my entire, I think I've been making content for almost 20 years now. This is one of my proudest moments because it's like, I don't know if anybody will ever watch this, and I just don't care because I feel like the energy of this video is a contribution to civilization and to human consciousness because it's like a vote. It's a vote of attention about what is worth paying attention to and what I think the public square should be focused on, because what the public square is focused on is, in my opinion, arguably the most important thing. It's not the opinion about the topic, it's what topic are you even discussing. So, with that said, thanks for watching. Follow me on Twitter and Rumble and even YouTube. I'm even finding a little place of love in my heart for fucking censorious, satanic YouTube. So anyway, Otis 5D everywhere. Thanks for watching. Blah, 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 blah. Go fuck yourself. Peace.
Otis5D.xyz.
Go fuck yourself.